This is Sarah Weiss's governance project for University of Nebraska-Lincoln Educational Administration course 910, The Environment of Higher Education. This project will discuss the governance structures in both Washington State, my home state, as well as my assigned state in North Carolina. This project will discuss the organization of the university systems, overall higher educational governance, community college and technical college systems, as well as how the independent colleges play into the overall governance structure in both states. Finally, this project will seek to compare similarities between both Washington and North Carolina, as well as note the differences between the two states and note what is perceived by me, the author, Sarah Weiss, as best practice. Washington and North Carolina are very different states. Washington has approximately 7 million residents, while North Carolina is over 9 million. Washington State is a very divided state, literally, by the Cascade Mountains. The western side of the state houses Seattle, the largest and really only metropolitan area, while the eastern side of the state is primarily agricultural and fairly rural. North Carolina has three major metropolitan areas that each have over 1 million residents, two of which have over 2 million residents. So the states are different in their demographic breakup. Obviously, they are both on opposite coasts of the United States, and this project will again discuss the differences and similarities between their higher education systems. We'll start with Washington. Washington Student Achievement Council is essentially the governing body for higher education in the state of Washington. It is a cabinet-level agency, was established in July of 2012. The goal of this council is to provide strategic planning, advocate for students and for education, and the development of programs within the state of Washington, with the overall goal of increasing access and student success to post-secondary education within the state. The agency reports directly to the governor of Washington. Currently that is Jay Inslee, who took office last year. Essentially, the Washington Student Achievement Council's goal is to really represent the four major educational sectors within the state. The first is the independent and private colleges of Washington State. There are appointed members from the Independent Colleges of Washington, which is an organization that will be discussed later. The four-year institutions of higher education essentially are the public universities in the state of Washington. The representative for the Student Achievement Council is appointed by the Council of Presidents, which is comprised of the presidents of all of the public universities. The community and technical colleges, there are 34 within the state of Washington, the representatives for the council are selected by the state board for those colleges to serve on the Washington Student Achievement Council. The other major component that the Student Achievement Council represents is K-12 institutions. Now this is a separate agency in a way in that the Superintendent of Public Instructions works with the State Board of Education and the Student Achievement Council to represent K-12 education, but in an attempt to tie together K-12 and higher education, the Washington Student Achievement Council weaves all of these areas in together. How the Washington Student Achievement Council works is the main focus of their work is that they're responsible for collecting and reporting achievement data at post-secondary education institutions within Washington. That represents all institution types, so not just the public institutions and community colleges, but also the independent colleges, those that are members of the Independent Colleges of Washington organization and those that are not. They also, specifically for the public institutions, they outline the policy for the state universities and oversee their budgets. Recently, actually this month, the universities were tasked to come up with a budget scenario of reducing their budgets by 15%. The state is in a situation where they're needing to fund K-12 education and pre-K education more heavily than they have in the past. And to find those funds, the governor asked all of the universities to propose what their budget would look like with a 15% reduction. Washington Student Achievement Council outlines the process for that. And interestingly enough, all of the universities but one did do the proposal, but Western Washington University refused to do the scenario, stating that they could not serve their constituents and students with less funding. Additionally, the Washington Student Achievement Council is a leader for connecting students at the community and technical colleges and the state universities with transfer policy and articulation agreements, ensuring that there's a smooth transition for all students. As stated above, the Washington Student Achievement Council reports directly to the governor's office as a cabinet-level agency and state legislature, frequently with updates. This is a list of the public baccalaureate granting institutions in the state of Washington. University of Washington and Washington State being the largest. Each of them have 3 campuses, their main campuses, and then 2 regional campuses in addition. Washington State University is the land-grant institution, and then the remaining 3 there on the list, Western Washington, Central Washington, and Eastern Washington, are what is referred to as regional universities. And then the Evergreen State College is more of a liberal arts and sciences focus university or college in the state. These institutions are not organized as a system in the sense that they have one chancellor who oversees all of them. They are independent institutions, but they do all report to the Washington Student Achievement Council via the Council of Presidents, which is represented by one president, the president from each of the institutions. The community colleges in Washington State are represented by the State Board for Community and Technical Colleges. There are 9 members to the board. They're all appointed by the governor himself. There are 34 community and technical colleges throughout Washington State. Some of them are community colleges in the true sense of the word that prepare students to transfer to one of the 4-year institutions in the state, public or private. Some of them are solely technical colleges, and others have both transfer and traditional programs combined with technical programs. Interestingly enough, the State Board for Community and Technical College is a staffed organization. It is not solely a board. There are directors, for example, Director of Student Services, who works with all of the community colleges to make sure student services and our needs are being met. It is a regulatory board, so it does have authority to provide guidance, leadership, and regulations for each of the community colleges and technical colleges in the state of Washington. Again, the State Board for Community and Technical Colleges is overseen by the Student Achievement Council, which then reports directly to the legislature. They are, again, a separate agency from the Student Achievement Council, but work very closely in a liaison capacity. The State Board for Community and Technical Colleges, differently from the universities each propose and submit an individual budget for their campus. These community colleges present one budget for the community college system. So this is a true system compared to the universities in the state of Washington. Again, the State Board manages the course curriculum for all of the campuses. There is a consistent curriculum across all campuses, consistent course numberings and transfer policies among all of the campuses so that a student is receiving consistent information regardless of what actual school they attend. The Independent Colleges of Washington is a non-regulatory organization. It includes 10 private colleges and universities. It does not include all of the private colleges in the state of Washington. So not all private and independent schools in Washington are members of ICW, but this association share a common commitment to providing accessible, academically rigorous curriculum, a diverse experience to their students. The organization provides scholarships to students who attend one of their institutions. The organization will also advocate for the needs and rights of their 10 members with the legislature, and again do report, though in a non-regulatory sense, to the Washington Student Achievement Council. North Carolina is a different situation. The Board of Education primarily focuses on K-12, but does have liaisons with both public and private higher education. The North Carolina Educational Cabinet is structured differently than Washington. It's chaired by the governor. It has other members from both K-12 as well as the University of North Carolina system, the community colleges, as well as the Association for Independent Colleges and Universities. And this was a recent addition to this cabinet through a legislative action. The community college system, similarly, is that, just a system. Their mission focuses on opening the door to higher education for their students within the state. They have a really significant focus on specific workforce training programs. Many of their programs at their 59 locations throughout the state are focused on workforce training, technical and vocational education, as well as in collaboration with the University of North Carolina system institutions, transfer programs. But there is a significant focus on workforce training and technical vocational education. The universities, public universities in North Carolina, function as a system. They are all under the University of North Carolina system. There are 17 campuses, 16 colleges, and one high school where students can receive college education as high school students. Some commonly known universities as part of this system are the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill, as well as North Carolina State University, which is the land-grant institution in North Carolina. The budgets for these are compiled from each campus and then presented as a single system budget rather than independently to the state legislature. Curriculum, program, policy is all managed system-wide and presented again to the state legislature as a system. The North Carolina Independent Colleges and Universities, this organization is also a non-regulatory organization, but represents all of the independent nonprofit institutions in the state, all 36. Similar mission to Washington's ICW. It advocates, represents the private institutions and their students at the state and federal level in looking for funding and regarding policy that affects their members. They also provide scholarships and create programs that will further the state's economy and educational structure. So as I've gone through this presentation, you hear that there are many similarities between Washington and North Carolina. Most commonly is the mission of the state institutions, both the universities and the community college. They further their mission is to further the education within the state. Their focus is to produce more educated workforce in the states that they both represent. The organization of independent colleges and the integration with them in the state's higher education is similar. The connections between state agencies and the role that they both have in terms of advocating for their students. Both states, the community colleges, are run as true systems, and the focus on technical and vocational education at the community college level is similar in both Washington and North Carolina. There are some significant differences, however. North Carolina, all independent institutions are represented by the Independent Colleges Organization as compared to Washington. The Washington public universities are independent of each other versus North Carolina, which is run as a system. And the connection to higher education agencies is more prominent with the K-12 in North Carolina than it is in Washington. Difficult to say what's better. In Washington, it is more difficult to create continuity, maybe confusing to students because it is so segmented. Again, noting that budget reduction. But the community college systems seem to function very similarly. In Washington, the independent college organization doesn't represent all schools. The question comes up, is it necessary to have all schools represented? And if they're not, what is the point of that? What is the point of the organization in only representing some of the independent colleges within the state? Overall, I do believe that North Carolina has a more connected and cohesive approach to higher education as compared to Washington. Washington schools are much more siloed and work independent of each other, which ultimately is likely to be detrimental to the students.